Okay, so for this week we are tackling a somewhat complicated topic, or maybe a multifaceted topic. So the chapter in the book is Subjectivism and Ethics, and there's some readings that I've given you, which are on evolutionary psychology and the evolutionary foundations of morality, and a couple of videos as well. There's the general video on evolution and the video of Franz de Waal talking about um, quote-unquote moral behavior in primates. Okay, so these are all related to the question of um, the relationship between emotions and morality. So one idea is that moral truths are subjective, or another way of saying it is that they're relative to every individual. Moral truths are just what I believe. So the book starts off by giving some polling numbers of how many people thought gay and lesbian relations were morally wrong, and how they've changed over time and whatever. 2001, 53% of them thought they were morally wrong. By 2014, only 38% thought they were morally wrong. Okay, so that's people's opinions. So subjectivism is the idea that morality is just relative to people's opinions, or in some sense a expression of people's opinions. The question is, well, okay, people believe this at one point in time about homosexuality, they believe something else, opinions change. Is there a moral truth of the matter? Okay. So the subjectivist answer, which encompasses a few different ideas, which we'll try and separate, is that no, morality, that's all morality is. It's essentially people's either opinions or feelings on a particular topic, and there's nothing more to morality. There's no objective moral truth. Okay. He summarizes it as people have different opinions, but where morality is concerned, there are no facts, no one is right, people just feel differently about things, and that's all there is to it. So a lot of times when people are talking about morality and they're arguing about something, and a lot of times people just sort of agree to disagree and say, well, okay, that's fine, you believe what you believe, I'll believe what I believe, and there's no truth about it. It's just your opinion. Or a lot of times if someone loses an argument on a topic, they'll say, well, that's just your opinion. And that's supposed to sort of level the playing field in some sense. Okay, so there's a couple different versions of subjectivism in section 3 of the book. One is called section 3 of the chapter, 3.2, chapter 3, section 2, 3.2, the linguistic turn. So it distinguishes between what he calls simple subjectivism, emotivism, and error theory. So simple subjectivism, he says, is when a person says that something is morally good or bad, this means that he or she approves of that thing or disapproves of it and nothing more. So X is morally good, X is right, X is good, X ought to be done, just translate as I, the speaker, approve of X, and similarly, X is wrong, X is bad, just means I, the speaker, disapprove of X. That's very similar to the second idea that he calls emotivism. So this was a sort of popular theory in the history of philosophy in the early 1900s. The idea that so in simple subjectivism, you're just stating your disapproval of something. Emotivism is the idea that there's no sort of factual content to moral statements. So you compare statements like gas prices are rising, Peyton Manning underwent multiple neck surgeries, Shakespeare wrote Hamlet. Those are statements of fact. They are facts. When you say Shakespeare wrote Hamlet, what you're trying to say is there was a person, his name was Shakespeare, he wrote some piece of writing called Hamlet. He compares that type of statement, in which we're stating a fact, to something like "Arg," or "Way to go, Peyton," or "Alas, poor Yorick." So Yorick, character from Hamlet, "Alas, poor Yorick." You're not stating any fact. What you're doing is expressing an emotion of sadness. Or if you say "Way to go, Peyton," you're expressing that you are happy that Peyton Manning just threw a touchdown or whatever. Okay, so these statements, like "Alas, poor Yorick," they cannot be true or false. So Shakespeare wrote Hamlet, that can be true or false, right? It might be the case that the person who actually wrote Hamlet, his name was Richard. It wasn't Shakespeare, and maybe Shakespeare never existed. But when you say alas poor Yorick, or damn, or whatever you say, then you're not expressing a fact. You're not trying to say something about the world, you're expressing your emotions. So the idea in emotivism is you're expressing your emotions. Um, and he compares a couple statements, just sort of emphasizing this distinction between facts and feelings. First is, I believe that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone in killing President John F. Kennedy, and you believe that Oswald was part of a conspiracy. This is a factual disagreement. I believe something to be true, which you believe to be false. And now compare that, he says, to, I am rooting for the Atlanta Braves to win, and you are rooting for them to lose. Our beliefs are not in conflict, but our desires are. I want something to happen, which you want not to happen. So we can talk about our feelings, but that is different from talking about facts. When we talk about facts, there's agreement and disagreement. When we talk about feelings, we're not disagreeing about any particular set of facts. So on one theory, moral disagreement is just a disagreement in attitudes. If someone's pro-gay marriage, someone else is anti-gay marriage. There's no fact of the matter. If someone says gay marriage is wrong, what they're just saying is I don't like it, and someone says it's right, what they're saying is I do like it. So they're not disagreeing about a fact, whether gay marriage should be legal or not, or is morally right or wrong. They're disagreeing. They just have different feelings on the topic. The last version of ethical subjectivism was by a philosopher, J.L. Mackey, called it error theory. So his idea here was there are no moral facts, there are no moral truths, but when people say murder is wrong or gay marriage is wrong, they're not merely expressing an opinion. What they're doing is they're stating, they're making a statement about a certain kind of value that just doesn't exist in the universe. So they're in error. So they're not just expressing their opinion, they're making a true or false statement. So in emotivism, what it does is it retranslates these moral statements into emotional. So that's emotional statements or statements of emotion, which you might think, well, hey, no, when I say murder is wrong, I'm not just saying I don't like murder. I'm stating that it's morally wrong. And Mackey would be sympathetic to that. He's saying, yeah, people are actually saying things and actually having real disagreements when they talk about things like gay marriage. But what Mackey says is their disagreements are stupid because, or misguided, because there's nothing to disagree about. There's no fact of the matter whether gay marriage is right or wrong. Facts are about scientific things, and there's no facts about moral things. So all moral statements are essentially in error, is Mackey's idea. So, okay. So Mackey's version is explained in the next, what Mackey's idea is kind of section 3.3, calls it denial of value. There's no moral value in the universe. Okay, philosophers generally don't like that view, but it is, as Rachel's acknowledged, is a hard position to refute. So in philosophy, a lot of times, there's no way to definitively prove something, but it's more a matter of choosing to believe in certain things and then working out what follows from those beliefs. Okay, so the last useful section in this chapter is 3.4. You can read 3.5 if you want, but it's not related exactly. So this section is called Ethics and Science, and what it does on the first page of that section, he compares three statements. The first is there are moral values in the same way that there are planets and spoons, and the second, so that's it. And the second would be our values are nothing more than the expression of our subjective feelings. Now, I think what most of us would feel is that both of those are obviously false, right? There are obviously not moral values in the same way there are planets or spoons. You can't reach out and touch a moral value and grab it. But it does seem like there are moral values or something more than merely our subjective feelings about a topic. Okay, so Mackey. Rachel says, this overlooks a third possibility. People have not only feelings but reason, and that makes a big difference. It may be that 3, moral truths are a matter of reason. A moral judgment is true if it is backed by better reasons than the alternative. So A third sort of position, which you might think is a more moderate position or different from these other two, which are um, sort of extreme views about what morality is, whether it's one extreme view is that moral truths are like planets and spoons. On the other side, it's that moral truths are just subjective feelings. The third is, well, moral truths are the things that we have good reason to believe. Now, reason is not the most obvious sort of type of thing, so it takes some time to try and understand that answer, but all right. So he has a couple examples of moral statements, and he tries to show what types of reasons would support those moral statements. So one is, Jones is a bad man. So how would you support that moral judgment? Well, he says Jones is a habitual liar. He enjoys ridiculing people. He cheats at cards, and he once killed a man in a dispute over 27 cents. Okay, so those are reasons to believe that Jones is a bad man. Second statement, Dr. Smith is irresponsible. She bases her diagnoses on superficial conditions. She doesn't listen to other doctors' advice. She drinks cheap American beer before performing delicate surgery, and so on. 3, Joe, the used car dealer, is immoral. And the reasons are he conceals defects in his cars, he tries to pressure people into paying too much, and he runs misleading ads on the web, so on, so on. Okay, so the next paragraph I think is pretty crucial. He says, the process of giving reasons can be taken further. If we criticize Jones for being a habitual liar, we can go on to explain why lying is bad. Lying is bad, first, because it harms people. If I give you false information, you rely on it, things may go wrong for you in all sorts of ways. Second, lying is a violation of trust, etc., etc. Finally, the rule requiring truthfulness is necessary for society to exist. If it could not exist, if we didn't trust other people, what they said, communication would be impossible. If that was impossible, society would fall apart. So we can give these reasons which are connected to things we care about. Now, the nihilist might say, well, okay, I don't care if society falls apart, I don't care if people are harmed, whatever, whatever. But if you're committed to society being a good thing, to people not suffering needlessly, things like that, you can then use those basic sort of moral commitments to avoiding harm to other people and things like that to show why certain things are right, certain things are wrong. All right. Next paragraph he says, so we can support our judgments with good reason, and we can explain why those reasons matter. If we can do all this, and for an encore show that no comparable case can be made on the other side, what more in the way of proof could anyone want? So you have all these reasons why Jones is a bad man, and there's no evidence that Jones is a good man, then in some sense you've proved that he's a bad man. All right. Concludes that paragraph by saying the fact that ethical reasoning differs from scientific reasoning does not mean ethics is deficient. All right, there's one last little point in this section, which is that the difference between proving an opinion to be correct versus persuading someone to accept your proof. Those are very different things. You may prove your case, but someone may not be willing to accept it, and that's perfectly fine. It doesn't mean that just because someone's not going to accept it, you haven't offered adequate proof of a particular ethical issue. Those are two entirely separate matters. All right, there's one last thing, which, actually, never mind, make a separate video. All right, that is our discussion of Rachel's Chapter 3, Subjectivism and Ethics.